David Goggins is an introverted, soft kid that got beat up growing up and mindset had to lie to create friends, to get friends, to be accepted. My life has really been about two people. Very scary, but two people. I had to invent a whole nother human being to get outside of my comfort zone. And that human being became Goggins. Goggins is like the guy that walks out of the phone booth. He's like that Superman that walks out of the phone booth. And I was talking to my fiance today about, it's strange how sometimes I have a conversation between David Goggins, and Goggins will tell David Goggins about the shit he's done. And David Goggins like, what the hell, man? Why are you doing that? That's nuts. So kind of this battle between trying to find more of yourself, knowing that the real you is afraid, likes comfort, likes living in a world that likes to pat you on the back, give you the things that you want to hear, not the things that you have to hear to get better. So that's where all this kind of started from. And when people hear this podcast, they're going to hear a lot of things that they're going to want to put a title on me. They're going to definitely want to put a title on me to make themselves feel better. I asked them during this podcast, do not do that. Do not look at what you're going to hear. Put a title on me, because basically what you're doing is you're giving yourself a get out of jail free card. That's all you're doing. So all you're doing is saying this guy was some super freak. He found some super thing in his brain that was locked up. He unleashed it and became this guy. It's a fucking lie. Because every day I wake up, I dread the day. I dread the day of what I'm going to bring on myself to get better. It appeared the first time I was 17. And we'll get to that, but it really appeared when I gained about 125 pounds. I went from 175 to 300 pounds almost. And lowest part of my life, I was making no money. I was spraying for cockroaches, and all this stuff was just coming on me. And I was like, I have to find something. And Goggins came out. Like through all my insecurities, all my fears, all my doubts, all my introverted ways. I used to stutter real bad. Everything I did, I had to find strength in that. And that's when it happened, about 24 years old. That happened about 7 times.
Okay.
So I give people like the quick version. Right. The quick version, I give them 1 episode. This is about 2 weeks. And in my book, I go through it. I sit on the couch, saw this show on Discovery Channel, and that started the process of, I think I want to be a Navy SEAL. So I started calling up different recruiters, walking into, some guy said to me, you're fat and you're black. So that kind of went on for a while, and until I met one recruiter. And one recruiter saw something in me that no one else saw and gave me a shot. So basically I walked in, I had about 3 months, a little less than 3 months to lose 106 pounds. So I was like, this is fucking impossible, man. I can't do that. And at that time, I had no real drive to be a Navy SEAL, to be anything. I just knew something had to change. This isn't gonna work, man. The lifestyle that I'm living, something has to change. So I went to work that day and I was spraying for cockroaches, and lo and behold, it's a very bad day at work. I found a whole bunch of cockroaches, rodents. It was a bad restaurant. And I came home, I quit my job that day. I was driving home, I said, I gotta fucking do something. And I said, I'm gonna go home and run 4 miles. And 4 miles is only a quarter mile. And then from there, the story really begins from that point. I understand it. It's a miserable place. Now that I'm going there, now you have me. I'm living on that couch right now with a milkshake in my hand, thinking about how the fuck am I gonna pull this off? I realized for myself was I wanted that comfort zone that everybody looks for, that pat on the back. They don't want to hear all the bad shit. They want to hear everything that they're doing. And I realized that's what kept me in this world. That's what kept me in this world of not accomplishing anything. So what I did was I became that big, bad, nasty that you don't want to walk into at nighttime. I became the roughest critic in the world on myself. And that's what changed me. I literally saw myself in the mirror. I saw the truth versus saying, my dad did this to me from beating me, kids in school from calling me nigger did this to me, my life did this to me, my fucked up broken foundation did this to me. I took that and said, you know what? Some people may help this happen, but now I have to own this. No one's gonna come back to save me. No one's gonna come back on this couch and say, hey, it's okay. You're gonna be okay. No, I'm not. I'm not going to be okay. I had to realize I had to take a stand and make a real stand. And it was painful to look at who I was, what the world and myself created. I would call this guy up at almost every night about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night and give him an update. I said, hey man, I've lost 25 fucking pounds. Because no one knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I had to have so I'm really good at creating an enemy. I'm really good at creating something that I'm against. And I'm also good at, if you ever tell me something that I cannot do, I'm gonna let you know that I'm doing it. Somehow you're gonna fucking know, one way or another, that I'm doing it. It may not be like in your face. I may make sure that I run across the world, so then it's on the news, and you turn the news on and say, how the hell
did he do that?
I want to do something that I'm here. I'm here. So every time I lose like a big significant amount of weight, I call that recruiter up and say, hey man, I'm here. I'm here. And before I knew it, man, this guy became almost like my best friend at that time. Because I started actually changing his life. He started seeing, wow, man, I'm glad I took a shot on this guy.
Right.
And not only did I lose weight, I had to go back and take the ASVAB test again. It was like a watered down SAT a couple more times just to get in the Navy SEAL. So it was a big process. 3 months was packed full of like failures, depression, even more. But what I found out in that whole 3 months, I lived a lifetime. In that 3 months, I started realizing if I can flip these insecurities upside down, if I can flip this fear, if I can flip all this shit that made me this depressed, insecure guy, if I can flip it and make it work for me versus against me, I started seeing the power in failure, the power in insecurity, the power in self-doubt. Because I looked at everybody, it may not be true, but that's how I looked at everybody as being way above me. I thought to myself, if I can be at the lowest part in the world, in the sewer, and be able to overcome all this shit, I started using that as power. And I slowly started passing the guys from Harvard, the guys from MIT, the guys who were from great families and shit. I'm like, oh my God, I'm catching up. I had nothing. So I started flipping it and using it as power. There's something that I invented a long time ago. And when you have nothing to draw from, I was able to find strength in every molecule of this earth. I'm able to be in a room with nothing, with no motivation, no inspiration, nothing, and find it. So what I did in those situations was I invented this thing called taking souls. When everybody's all fucked up and you're exhausted and you're weak and you're tired and you're looking around and everybody looks as bad as you or even worse, I'm like, you know what? I want to now make a statement. It's the perfect time to make a statement. To let you know where your life ends and mine begins. And so the statement there is, I muster up every bit of strength from their looks on their faces and how they feel, and how I'm gonna now, from my childhood, where I came from, how I was the bottom of the barrel, I'm now amongst all these uncommon people. I'm now going to make you feel like you're common. So I used their sadness, their weakness, their parts of their life where, God, this sucks. I used that for my strength. And I have this moment of, let's say we're in the sand, we're running or whatever. I will do a surge. I will do something when everybody's like, how the fuck is he doing this? And from that look on their face, that feeling of, God, man, this guy must be something special. It then surges me further and faster and harder for a long time. So it's energy's everywhere. But the thing is, it's so loud. That voice in your head of pain and suffering and discomfort and I don't want to do this is so loud that you're unable to really calm it down and say, okay, there's something here. It's a patient calm that you have to bring to yourself to say, I know I have something here, but that voice is so powerful that it just wants you just to, let's leave. We're done. Spazzes you out and you want to go versus saying, let's take a second. Hang on. Before we spaz the fuck out, hang on. And in that moment, you can think clearly and find that strength out there for you. I know one thing, and this is a true statement that I've said several times. A lot of us don't know of a whole nother world that exists. It's on the other side of suffering. Once you break these barriers that you have made for yourself. Like the mind is the most powerful thing in the world. In the world.
It is.
It is so amazing that I used to be a 300-pound guy and I thought that was it. Could barely read, could do anything. And now, that what was inside that person was this guy that's in front of you today. That's how scary the mind is. And that's what I started realizing through this journey, is that once I got a taste of, wow, man, I haven't even begun to crack what the mind is capable of. And when I started realizing is on the other end of suffering, that's the real growth of life, because you realize how the mind processes shit. And I talk about another thing called theory and practice. A lot of people are theorists. These smart guys that read these fucking books and shit, man, and they sit down, they tell you what the mind is supposed to do. And a lot of us listen to that shit. It becomes, this is it, man. This old man who has been studying the mind forever, this is the cap that we have. By being a practitioner, I went out and realized a lot of these guys are so wrong, man. The mind has capabilities that are so unknown, and I found that through suffering. And there's a whole nother world on the other end of that. I call that my 40% rule, where like a car has a governor on it. It can go 30, the governor's only gonna go 91. And the whole thing about that is a true statement, like what you said. Our mind wants to protect us. The mind is honestly, it has a tactical advantage over us. It knows our deepest, darkest fears or insecurities. It knows where we start getting that doubt creeping that says, hey man, you know what, man, maybe this isn't good. Let's go back home to the wife. Let's go back home to the kids. This is not comfortable. So in that moment, the mind directs us. It's a protective mechanism. It saves us from doing bodily harm, or it really saves us from discovering that the mind's, I want to be in charge of you. I don't want you to be in charge of me. So it tells you, let's just stop right here. But once you start breaking through that barrier and start breaking down the governor that you've put in your mind, because we forget we are in control of our mind. We believe it's the other way around. No, we put in our minds what we should do, but we believe our mind is telling us, it's giving us all this feedback. We have to reprogram it and tell us, we're good, we got it. This sucks, but it's okay. The first big thing is, once again, it goes back to open-mindedness. If you walk into any kind of event, whether it be physical or mental, if you walk in with already putting that block on your mind of, man, this ain't gonna happen. People go, how did you run 135 miles to Death Valley? How did you run 100 miles with no training? Because I went into it not thinking, I can't do this, man. I went into it with a strategy. I had an open-mindedness. So until your mind is open to the possibilities that I can do this, you would never be able to do it. Once the mind starts to believe it can be achieved, only then does it start to break down tactically how we can do this. Until then, you're gonna always lose. I have so many conversations in my mind because so many times I want to quit. But this is what it is. This is what I figured out. I was so afraid of myself that I had to figure out, I became a master of my mind. People, when you're afraid of something, you have to master it. That's how you start to overcome it. So what I realized, when I get to that point where I want to quit, everybody, they get to the point where they want to quit. This is what happens. The mind tells you, let's go home. Let's take a warm shower. Let's get some food. This is not right. This is that. If you cannot answer the questions at that moment, because your mind's gonna start giving you all these questions. And if you can't answer them, you're going to quit. What I realized, my mind would come creeping in. Like when I was doing 4,030 pull-ups at 2,000 pull-ups and my hands were ripped open, my mind said, look, brother, we've done all these other things. You've proven yourself. You're good. If I didn't have the answer to respond to my mind and say why I'm here, why I'm doing this, you will always lose that fight. You have to have the response to what your mind is going to tell you. And another thing about that is self-talk. A lot of people have these big four on mental toughness. All that shit is crap about self-talk, visualization. It's true, but the thing about self-talk and all these things, They ask me, what do you think about when you're on mile 100 of a 205-mile run? What are you thinking about when you realize you've run for 24 hours and you have 24 more hours to run and you have another 105 miles? What goes through your mind? What do you say to yourself? I want to know. A lot of people think self-talk works. It does, but it doesn't work without the suffering before your mind starts saying we need self-talk. So what I tell myself is I go back to the months and years of preparation to get to that day. And I'm telling myself, the 3:30 in the morning, and I'm looking at my shoes and I want to go out there and run 30 miles. I have to, in that second, in that moment of this self-talk, my mind saying, you got to find more, you got to find more. I once again calm down, go back into my mind, in my cookie jar, I call it, and I have to reflect back on the shit I did to get here. And that becomes my self-talk. Self-talk does not work unless it is real. Most of us lie to ourselves in the self-talk. It doesn't work. It has to be real. It has to be something that you've done to make it really work. The reason why we go back to old habits is because our goals are too lofty. We're not achieving our goals fast enough. So what happens is, you know what? Oh man, we're very impatient nowadays. For me, it was good. I didn't have a phone. I was out of this world by myself. It was a race against David Goggins. It wasn't a race against, God, I want to look good for this person or that person. It was me. I got to change myself. So for me, if I lost 5 pounds in a week, I got a feeling. I allowed myself to feel proud of that. I didn't look at, I got to lose 106 pounds. I'm like, man, I went from 297, now I'm 292. In 1 week, man, I'm killing it. We're not proud of ourselves for the small accomplishments. What we need is we need this monstrosity of a thing to happen and say, I did it. Nah, there's a process that you have to go through, and patience is the process. And if we don't have patience, after a week, I haven't lost 30 pounds, man, I'm done. I'm over it. So that's what I found out with people, man. They're not patient enough to realize and to enjoy the moment, not live in it, just enjoy it. There's no finish line in life, but enjoy that moment. Roger that, man, I lost 5. Let me go 10 next week. So that's the whole thing about it. That's how people lose it. You know what? Being accepted is one thing that killed me. And you have to learn, what do you want in your life? We have so much influence coming at us that we are so lost. We don't know what we want to do because we don't spend enough time with ourselves. You have to learn to shut off a phone, shut off a computer, shut off a TV. And it's okay to sit in a room by yourself in a chair and just think about you, where I want to be, where do I see myself tomorrow, the next year from that. And it takes a lot of self-discipline to be able to do that nowadays, because you want to be so attached to everything. You want to be so caught up with the world. The world's moving too fast. The world's moving so fast that you're trying to keep up to the point where you lose yourself in the world. So you have to take that time and go to that dark place in your mind and discover who you are. It's an endless process. Endless process. All that shit that I went through in my life to get here today, it is tattooed. It is tattooed in my brain. Every day I wake up, I am constantly battling that person that is like, man, back in the day, this happened to you, man. Like, you got called nigger so many times, and your dad beat the shit out of you, man, and you couldn't read, and this dad going junior year. All these things start to creep up, even now where you're at today. Every day, you're having to constantly battle. It's not as bad as it used to be by any means, but that person's still there. That person always lives. That's the point about you have to continue to always challenge yourself every day. Now, there are really no small victories now for me, because what happens is once you transform yourself, and even though I'm not running from myself, I'm constantly facing myself. I'm constantly battling myself. I'm not running from them anymore. I used to, but now I'm constantly battling them. So now what happens is once you get to a point in your life where you're able to be on a podcast or be on a TV show and tell everybody how fucked up you are, I will answer any question you want about me. Anything I did, anything bad, good, ugly, I will tell you. When you get to that point in your life, that's where your real journey begins. And you no longer have to have a small victory to keep you going. you now realize what your purpose in life is. And you realize all this shit's just part of it. But at first, you need all these different tactics to keep you going because you haven't figured it out yet. Once you figure out that you're in a race amongst billions of people that live in this world, you're in a race by yourself. You have a purpose, and it's your purpose, not everybody else's purpose. It is your purpose and only your purpose, and it's your race. So then you're like, hey man, I'm doing my thing. I'm doing it to the best of my ability. What's next? There's no longer these small increments to get through life. Because once you figure out why you're here, it just becomes a process.